they would take us out in the hallway, and everybody would get in the hallway, and we would all get into like this fetal position up against the wall. And that was supposed to protect us from a nuclear attack from Russia. I was discussing how there was only a certain amount of videos because everybody didn't have a high definition pocket device on them.
Let's get away from Masons now, folks. We're not talking about Masons. We're talking about like the high up.
I was big into UFOs at the time. I wanted to see as many. I read the Majestic 12 documents. Anything I get my hands on.
Jason, how are you, bud?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, you're more than welcome. It's another thing to get off your backside and make a whole film about it. And it was a really well-made film as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, it's one of those things. I actually kind of revisited it today. Took people along that journey. This all took place in my very early 20s. I'm from New York State, not New York City, but still a large effect there. And certainly amongst the panic in the very beginning to a high degree, right? So how does somebody like me come across this information or even decide to question it in the first place? Because, I described it as a shock moment where initially I might have had some questions, but I bought into the government narrative pretty easily. I mean, it was hard not to, right? Like, especially at the time period and how it rolled out. And really the internet in its infancy and social media not really even being much of a thing at that point. Those, YouTube not existing. I could continue. Media brainwashing and talking points and Bernaysian psychology really works, right? Like it's proven, it's de facto, it's safe and effective, brother. You know what I'm saying? Like they did it well. Okay. Now they hate us for our freedoms. Oh, that must be it. So literally, I actually walk outside after taking a shower, trying to kind of soak things in. And my neighbor starts screaming about bin Laden. I'm not up for an hour yet. Right. And then the first thing I'm hearing is that bin Laden's doing this. There wasn't any like discernible volume on the TV when I saw it. It was kind of one of those shock moments. So I go, bin Laden. I go, what are you talking about? How would you? I go, this just happened. How would anybody know who did this right now? And he goes, oh, he hates America. And that's blah, 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 blah. And I looked at him. I go, yeah, but wasn't like a crazy white guy that did OKC? Again, I'm on the mainstream paradigm. I'm thinking Tim McVeigh. I have no idea that has a lot of questions to it. Okay. And by the way, those are addressed in my film, Invisible Empire, A New World Order, Defined to some degree. I would encourage people to check that out. I buy into it. Right. I buy into it. Afghanistan, I'm all about it. Let's do it. I'm watching a lot of news now. Because another thing that folks don't realize and don't remember at that time period, all TV was over. There was no NBC. There's no late night with David Letterman or Leno. None of that. No MTV. There's no sports going on. Right. Like it took a while. So all of a sudden, you had previously, CNN brought us the first televised war in the first 24-hour news where you could see it, there in the 90s early. You saw competitors come in during the Clinton administration, especially the Lewinsky MSNBC launches, Fox News launches. They're there now, but it's not culture. Everything was news for the next week. You didn't have a choice. There was literally nothing else on other than the news. And really the first thing that we all saw together was what? That Red Cross propaganda special where they were saying they were going to take care of the victims and then they stole all the money. And you're just a casualty of really a globalist, what I believe is a transhumanist agenda, ultimately, because this brought in the track trace database society and the war of terror. It brought in the biometric surveillance of Afghanistan and Iraq and the drones and the automation that we don't talk about. That's now coming here, by the way. That's where they beta tested it. My wake up moment for the bin Laden thing is, first of all, I already hear them talking about Iraq. And I'm like, look, I know enough about Saddam Hussein and kind of the corruption there. The internet was live, and I was a little pirate. So was downloading not only movies, but a bunch of documentaries. Previously, what I'd used the internet for was I used to get the CIA MK Ultra documents. I wanted to see whether it was said to be legitimate or not. I wanted to read it. So I was very in Kennedy assassination stuff, very interested in all that. So finally, I have my breaking point where I am back in my old high school. I live about an hour away. That's where I went to college with actually a couple of my buddies from high school. By this point, they're about to be school teachers at my old school to start. And I'm a beauty school dropout, right? And I'm in the bathroom of this men's night basketball game. So I'm back there with my old coaches on the floor. And this is a small school, man. I graduated with 54 kids. Okay, very tiny. It is a middle school / high school. We're talking about 12-year-old kids in this school. And I go to take a piss in my old locker room, suited up there many times, have been revamped, and Bin Laden is in the urinal. And you are on his face. Boy, that was a wake-up call. There's just something right there. I'd already felt uneasy about what was going on in the world, right? And I'd already seen some anomalous things that I didn't even realize that were in my head, even from the first day. But I was like, all right, that's enough. I'm like, we're dirty. I know my government helped kill John F. Kennedy. I know they've experimented on people. I know Iran-Contra happened. And this is when I'm like a, 22-year-old kid. But I'm not stupid. and I was an AP history kid. I grew up poor, very poor. So I kind of saw how the system would take advantage of people. And I couldn't wait to become an adult. And I always had this mantra of like kind of educating myself and not trusting the establishment. Because guess what? The establishment F's over the little guy over and over and over and over again in history, just so everybody knows. No matter what language they speak or whether they're coming at from a political or religious angle, those in power really don't care about us. So I go home, shook a little bit. I lived through duck and cover. You look like a man who may have lived through duck and cover. Yes?
You're going to have to remind me what it is.
So for us in the States, because the Cold War was going on, when we were kids, a lot of people, we would have these nuclear drills. Okay. Yeah. So we're talking like between 5 years old and 11, probably in that stage, probably about 12, about sixth grade. Now, in some areas, what they would have you do is get under your desk and cover. It would be a drill. But for us, they would take us out in the hallway and everybody would get in the hallway and we would all get into like this fetal position up against the wall. And that was supposed to protect us from a nuclear attack from Russia. And for me, that's probably one of the most scary things that you could go through as a kid, right? Like, and we were watching this it wasn't a documentary, it was a Hollywood propaganda piece called The Day After Tomorrow or The Day After, Steve Gutenberg. And it was like everybody dies and it's horrible deaths and you might as well die. It was horrible. I never pissed on Gorbachev. It never happened. No one ever had me do that. So again, big wake-up call. So then how do I get into filmmaking? Well, if you haven't noticed in this podcast where your host has barely spoken, I have a knack for talking. And at the time, I also had a knack for technology. And what I would do is I would burn not DVDs, but CDRs, 700 megabyte CDRs with folders of information and compressed documentaries and things like that I was downloading off of Morpheus Network and the No Tele Network and the New Tele Network. This is peer-to-peer before torrents. They were kind of like a takeoff. LimeWire was probably ended up being the most popular out of all those, but I was on Kazaa all the way back in the day. So I compiled I had books of discs. And we're getting to about 2004-05. And I'm the loud guy at the party. I'm pissed. We're in Iraq. I'm like, this is real. And at that time, you think you get isolated now when you start talking about certain things that are real, right? Sure, Burmese, whatever. I don't care. People would give you that. First of all, they would just dismiss you, right? Now, some people would take the discs and they come back and they'd be, you know what? That's a little interesting. Because now We're in Iraq. Now there aren't any weapons of mass destruction. People are starting to get it, right? Now they're even talking about a draft. Gas didn't go down, it went up. All the lies are becoming a little bit less veiled, and they're becoming more absurd, as they often do. Remember the color-coded terror rankings, like all sorts of bullshit. We get to around 2005. Now, I'm about to turn 24 years young. At the time, I just left like a pizza job I was doing. I always thought I was going to be in 3D modeling or graphic design, video editing. That's the kind of stuff I went to school for. I was even like a TA. There's only so much you can learn from the professor, and all the other kind of stuff I just wasn't interested in. You know, I could care less. That was the career I wanted to get into. And it just so happens that in the summer, I get a job as a graphic designer. Okay. So it's my first desk job. I'm still working as a pizza guy at night. Okay. But I'm starting to get things together. I'm taking the bus in the morning to the desk job in Cooperstown. I'm doing work with the Baseball Hall of Fame. Things are coming up Burmese. So this movie's out there and I watch it and I'm like, this is it. All right. Like finally I've got something I can give to people that they're going to want. It was 60-minute version. It started with that most shock. I had folders of these videos, right? I even had an extra video that they didn't use in it. So I was like, I'm hyped that somebody's highlighting this. And then they put together this amazing piece. And I have no idea how old they are or who they are. There's no pictures, nothing. They're out of DC, Washington, DC. Well, that's a long way from Oneonta, New York, where I was. And I watched the film and look, man, I'm not a religious guy. I'm not here to preach to anybody about what they should do, what they should believe, and what religion you are. I don't pray a lot either. When I saw the film for the very first time and I saw they were from DC, I'm not going to lie. I literally prayed to God